Okay, so what we're going to do, in our first lesson, we're going to install Python, and we're going to install the IDE, or the development environment of choice, as well. Now, we're going to use Windows for this, predominantly because as network engineers, a lot of the time we are allocated Windows machines to use at work. So while Linux is great and easier to use because Python is already included as part of the underlying install of the operating system, Windows not so much. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the command prompt and see whether or not we actually have Python installed. So if I go on to here and let's do our command cmd, get our command prompt up and type in Python. Okay, so we see that Python's not recognized as an actual command, so Python is not installed on this version of Windows, and generally it's not installed by default anyway. And as you'll notice, I'm using a Windows 10 evaluate to a python.org. Now within python.org, it automatically here brings us to the Python page. We have our downloads, and you can see here that it's intelligent enough to know the browser that we're using and therefore the agent that we're actually running on, so it automatically shows us that it's got Windows. We can download for Mac OS, Android, or anything else, but we're going to download Python 3.13.7. so as we can see here, quick click and it is already downloaded. So let's have a look and see where it's downloaded it to our downloads folder. We could execute it directly from up here, but let's execute it from here. And now we have a couple of options. Okay, the important options that we need to be aware of is where it says here add to path. So this part here, we need to make sure that we tick that, because if we don't tick that, then what happens is it doesn't add the Python interpreter and the Python software to the actual path. So it means that if you want to run it from anywhere other than its installation folder, you can't do that. So you need to ensure that add Python exe to path is ticked, and once we've done that, we can install it. We can we can see here that it also includes its own IDE. Now IDE is just a development environment where you can create your code, you can run your code, things like that. I personally don't like their own Python environment, but there are plenty of Python environments to choose from. We're going to install one again shortly once we've added this in. So let's do our tick here, add Python to path, and install now. And it doesn't take very long. It's very, very quick install. There's not a huge amount to it. Like any other sort of software, you can add to it as you go along. You can add more libraries, more modules to give you more than the basic core functionality of it. But as we can see, it's running around quite nicely. So as we can see, that is now installed. We do have another option here if you want to disable the path links. Now sometimes the path, i.e. let's say c/your name/ whatever folder you're in, /subfolder, etc. the paths can get pretty long at times. Now that's not a Python thing, that is just the way that pathing actually works. Depends on how you set things up. If you have lots of structured folders and more folders within them, then eventually them addresses all get added to the path. So you can disable the path limit. So this is a Windows thing. It's nothing really to worry about. You don't generally have to, but I just tend to do that anyway. I tend to disable the path. But that is entirely up to you. That's not mandatory whatsoever. So Python is now installed. So now we have Python installed, let's bring back up our command prompt and have a little look to see what we can find. Okay, so let's now type in Python. And as we can see now, we are in the Python interpreter. So we have Python 3.13.7 already installed, and we have our Python environment that this is just pure raw Python. We'll be using this a little later on. Okay, let's get out of this. So just do Control D and get out of that. So what we need to do now is have a look at what sort of environment that we actually want to use. So let's do a search for, let's say, Python IDE, and you'll get a search, you'll get results here for all the current IDEs which, you know, are kind of recommended. Like, you know, if you trust like Tech Radar, go on there, have a little look. However, I use VS Code because VS Code, Visual Studio Code, Microsoft application, is absolutely fantastic. So let's have a look at that. Now, like I said, you're free to use any particular IDE that you actually want. You don't have to use VS Code, but you'll find it is actually the most popular. That Anaconda as well is often used. People use that. PyCharm, people use that as well. An IDE is just somewhere where you can collect all of your scripts. You can write your scripts, you can run your scripts. They all basically do the same thing, but some comes with additional functionality. Let me download this Visual Studio Code here. It shouldn't take too long, and we'll get this installed so you can have a little look at what VS Code actually looks like. Let's open that from here rather than going to the download folder, and I accept the agreement. I'm not going to read it because, you know, we don't do that sort of thing. You know, read what we what we agree to. Yeah, create a desktop item, why not? Yeah, I'm going to add all those. It's just for my own personal use. Okay, and it's going to set up VS Code for us. It won't take long, a few moments. Okay, so once VS Code is installed, it'll come to this prompt here where it asks you, do you want to launch it? So yeah, let's just launch it while we finish the last bit of the actual installation. And as you can see, you come to a really nice sort of screen. It doesn't look too great at the moment. Let's just mark that as done. All right, so with Visual Studio Code, you have the opportunity to install particular add-ons or extensions. Now these will make things so much easier for you, and not just for Python but anything you actually do. As you can see here, Python extension, it's got 180 million installs on it. It's one of the most popular ones, so we'll install this. A little later on, when you start getting into network automation, you'll be using things like Ansible, you'll be using things like Nornir, netconf, netmiko, things like that. And you can write all your code here in VS Code, and you get extensions for all of these particular languages and processes that you're going to run. If you're running GitHub, then you can have GitHub modules installed here to make things an awful lot easier for you. I mean, VS Code really is the Swiss Army knife of development environments. Okay, so as we can see here, I've installed the Python environments. All this will do is mainly check your code, make sure everything's working fine. So what we need to do now is have a very quick look at how we can get this up and running. So the first thing you really want to do is to designate yourself maybe a working environment, a working folder where you're going to do things from. So if I go into my C drive here, what do we have? Let's go onto this PC. This is brand new, so we shouldn't have anything really there. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a new folder within my my C drive, and let's call it Python _ training. Okay, so this is where I'm going to keep all of the things that we're going to do. Is we're going to keep it in the Python _ training. You can call it whatever you want on yours. So if I go up the top here to file, and let's do actually we can click it on there, open folder. So we can just click the the Explorer, open folder, and it tell you where do you want to open, what folder do you want to open from. So if I go to my C drive and I will go to Python training, select folder, and it'll ask me, do you want to trust anything that's in there? I'm going to say yes, and there we have it. We are now in our folder. So if we want to create files, so when we're starting off with our scripting, we're going to do it in the interpreter that comes with Python, like through the command prompt, just to get used to running some basic commands. But when you want to create little scripts to do something, you'll be creating them here, like the likes of a new file. You will call it, say, I don't know, vlans.py, because that's the extension. And then as soon as you do that, it generates a file, and you can confirm that by, let's go into the file structure, Python training, and there you go, we have vlans.py. I can actually create another file here. Let's do a text document for argument's sake, and let's put test1. So test1.txt, and as you can see, it's appeared up the top here. So all you're doing is interacting with the file structure. You're creating files, but you have the ability to run a terminal. So let's do a new terminal up the top there, and you've got the ability to run actual code. And the good thing about this IDE is when you open a terminal, it opens it up in whichever folder and location that you're in. Okay, so that is just basic installation of Python, and that's just the basic installation of VS Code. Again, you do not have to use VS Code. If you wish to use something a little different, you want to use, like I said, PyCharm, Anaconda, anything like that, then by all means you can do that. It's personal preference. I personally prefer to use VS Code, and everyone else that I have ever interacted with that does network automation, that does Python programming, or any program, generally uses VS Code. But it's entirely up to you, but I prefer this method. But they all work exactly the same way. You select a folder on your device, you create files, and you then run whichever scripts you want to do within that environment itself. Okay, great. So hopefully I'll see you in the next lecture where we'll actually start having a look at Python. He said this one's just a teaser. Get Python installed on Windows machine. Again, Linux and Mac don't really have to worry about that because they're already installed by default. And getting basic IDE functionality. Look forward to seeing you then.